Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we're looking at Overlay Sarcastic Productions, Miscellaneous Myths. This is going to be Hyacinthus, Pandora, and Fionn and Cumhaill. Now, I know who Pandora is! I have a rough idea of who Fionn is, and Hyacinthus is Greek? I don't know. That said, one of the best parts about anything OSP does is finding out all these bits of lore and history and mythology that I've never heard about before, and I'm here for this because it's fun, man. Also, Red's drawing is really awesome. So we're going to jump in and see what happens. I'm looking forward to this. You guys know the deal. Link below, video, hit it up. And let's get started.
So Apollo's got a bit of a reputation when it comes to how his relationships generally end. I mean, for a guy with an oracle on his payroll, he was really bad at finding people who would actually date him. I mean...
Seriously? I'm sorry, I'm so used to the idea of Zeus being the only one who's fucking around. I mean that in both sense of the word now I think about it, that I don't actually know much about Apollo's one. The fact that not many people wanted to date him, even as a joke, is kind of weird because God. I guess he's just too hot for that. Haha, sun god joke. I'm taking a low bar on this one. I'm okay with it.
Daphne, Castalia, Cassandra, Acantha, Bolina, Acro, Leucades. Considering how many of Apollo...
How? What? What?
Daphne...
Okay, what the hell, Daphne? Aeneid transformed by her father into a laurel tree at her request. So she treated herself. A nymph transformed by Apollo into a vision-granting fountain after she rejected him. And it's nymphs doing it too. Cassandra, a Trojan princess who was not won over by the gift of prophecy, subsequently cursed. Okay, yeah, that one's actually him being spiteful, and yeah, Troy. Is that a... what? A nymph who rejected Apollo and scratched his face turned into a spiky plant. Oh, cactus. A lot of nymphs reject him. Bolina. A mortal who flung herself into the sea to escape Apollo, subsequently rendered immortal? How many people just flung themselves in the sea? Acro? A mortal who flung herself into the sea and a boat to escape Apollo. Okay, at least that one had a backup plan. Leucades. A mortal who flung himself off the cliff to escape Apollo. And he's just asking why. Why does everyone cliff themselves? Oh my god. Is there more? Oh dear. I'm sorry. That's... I can assume the last three were probably initially one myth and it just went three separate ways at three separate retellings, but that is a lot of different ones. Also in the same way that the multiple nymphs were probably one initial retelling that then spread out to probably three different ones. The probably is important there. But still, that means there's various distinct aspects of Apollo that were all rejected in at least initial timelines, or at least the initial stories before they probably deviated. Unless there were three stories that were then simplified down into nymphs and then maybe spread out again, or... Sorry, I like that kind of stuff about how you can try and trace back stories' origins based on the similarities that they all share in common, how they're different little chase or transitions made. It's just fun to me.
Considering how many of Apollo's potential dates flung themselves off of cliffs or turned into various pieces of local flora just to avoid him, it's amazing the poor guy even tried anymore.
And water.
But surprisingly, Apollo did manage to have a few functional relationships. Kind of. At the very least, there were relationships he was in where he wasn't actually directly responsible for their tragic resolutions. The most famous of these is probably the romance of Apollo and Hyacinthus. Now, Hyacinthus is a young Spartan prince, and his primary defining feature is that he's super pretty. There's also apparently some evidence that he might actually be a pre-Hellenic deity of some sort. Anyway, bottom line is he's major...
Oh, actually, that's kind of fascinating. The idea of a pre-Hellenic deity making its way into the Grecian deities style. I think that would be the Hellenic ones. That's actually really fascinating, and it has happened before with some of the Titans being named, also kind of relating to various other aspects, because throughout most mythology, it was drawn from previous circles of religions to then bring into theirs to try and account for it, which is actually something in a more modern sense Christianity does with things like Halloween, or, well, a lot of the demons are actually previous various deities. I think Beelzebub was flies, but then there was something else prior to that, or maybe I'm mistaking it with something different. There was a bunch of people who then were listed as demons who were actually, I think, deities within, I want to say, where was Gilgamesh from? Urdu? No, that's something different. But it was from the same civilization as Gilgamesh was in. And, oh, Babylon. Wow, I'm kicking myself on that one. Memory, I have it. Just really bad. Yeah, the Babylonian deities. I know there's a specific name for that religion, but I cannot remember it either. I'm not going to try. There'll be some. My memory's already been pushed enough as it is today.
majorly cute, and Apollo goes all head over heels for him. Surprisingly, considering Apollo's track record.
Hi, my name's Apollo. Want to be graced with my presence for the rest of your life? Considering a track record, that's going to be very short.
Springing this on Hyacinthus does not send him screaming into the hills or turn him into a plant, and instead they end up getting along famously. So that's
Oh my god, it just... that never works. He literally did. Wow, I didn't think I'd get this far. I get that. I actually do really get that.
So that's cool. Unfortunately for everyone involved, Apollo isn't the only one who noticed Hyacinthus, and the lad actually...
The Meathead Boys Club, United, Spartan, educated, landowning, accurately allowed to exercise to do sports. The Daily Boys, the difference they don't join the military. Athens executes educated women. Athens executes educated women, and we're the Boys Club. Wow. We just can't shake the feeling we're going to be Flanderized in some cardboard frat house with Athens is held up as a beacon of civilized progress. I also hope everyone knows we wear armor when we fight, because that get weird otherwise. Oh, wow. They actually gave him a full dissertation about why the Spartans are probably the more civilized of the nations, where Athens was executing educated women. Oh man, the Greek are weird. And then there's Zephyr.
Actually has another deific admirer in the form of Zephyr the West Wind. Also, unfortunately, Zephyr has no idea how to express his feelings properly and just ends up stewing in his own jealousy while Apollo and Hyacinthus run around doing cute couple things. Also unfortunately, Zephyr subscribes to the if I can't have you, no one can school of romance. So one day when Apollo is showing Hyacinthus how to throw a discus, Zephyr decides to take the opportunity to kill Hyacinthus by shifting the winds and sending the discus into the side of his head. So that sucks. Apollo transforms the dying Hyacinthus into a flower to preserve his life and beauty forever, writes a little bit of emo poetry on the petals.
Oh, that's where I've heard that name before. It's a flower. Unironically, I completely was wondering why. I was like, the name sounds familiar. Is it Danmachi? It's probably Danmachi. And then we're like, oh no, wait, flower now. In hindsight, obvious. Just kind of kicking myself.
And goes off to cry to Hermes about it.
Whoa. There, big guy. At least he's a nice flower. You know, that shouldn't be as much of a consolation. But considering the Greek gods and how they kind of turn people into things, it's probably actually going to count as a consolation to someone.
About it. On the
Who's
plus
the
side, this love interest didn't turn into a plant until after the second date. The mirror on my wall, cast an image.
Oh god, yeah. And next up we have Pandora, the story of the lady who released the internet. I know what I said, I'm standing by it.
You know, mythology and folklore as a whole is a really incredible field to study. There's so much creativity and wonder, and it's really fun recognizing story elements that have persisted to the modern day or been adapted in one way or another to stories we actually recognize.
This is why I like this shit. I like everything she just said. Yes, so much yes. And not even that, just like comparing how things went. Like I've been, well, admittedly, bitching about for a while now in multiple videos. Not just comparing how it's still there now, but how we can recognize those things in the past that were probably created and then flanderized, unflanderized, translated, sometimes literally translated from one medium to another, to different countries, different languages, became different religions, and how they're taken back and just pulling from each other. Yes, everything about that. I like that. Sorry, I'm just geeking out because she just said the part I've been thinking out loud. I'm like, this is cool.
But sometimes you find a myth that really reminds you that you're studying a different culture from a different time and place, and that culture from a different time and place might have held some pretty nasty attitudes towards your demographic specifically, and they didn't hesitate to document those attitudes for posterity, and that can kinda sting. So, this is the story of Pandora, the first woman whose entire gender was created by Zeus specifically to be evil and sexy and make men's lives worse.
Wait, created by Zeus? Really? Also, I didn't realize she was the first woman. I thought she was just a woman. Huh. Interesting.
I'd like to apologize in advance for what the comment section is going to look like.
Disclaimer, I've got a bias against the story that characterizes me and my gender overall as evil and are solely existing to make my life harder for dudes. Besides the obvious sources of annoyance, it also does this thing where it correspondingly denies the reality of women existing and acting as having lives and motives outside the context of their interactions and the effects on dudes. While the story simply describes an antiquated stereotype, it is hard to not take stereotypes personally. It's kind of how stereotypes work. The story pushes some of my buttons, and thus my retelling is not and cannot be fully unbiased. I've done my best to retell it accurately, albeit saltily. But if you prefer your summaries to be devoid of personal opinions, I suggest you turn to Wikipedia. Carry on. Why Wikipedia? Everyone edits that so much, it's completely biased. I mean, sometimes the information's there, and it's free, which is why it's worthwhile. But yeah, no, you can edit that if you just go in there. And there's a ton of people who have an unbelievable amount of dedication, i.e. mental illness, to abscess. Not obsess, abscess, as in it's literally draining out of them in pustules into the keyboard. And that's my personal take. I'm sticking by it. To edit things to say exactly what they want. So their version of their OC in history is exactly what they want, and everyone will agree to it because no one is ever allowed to change it. It sounds like I'm making a joke, but you can look it up. That is actually a thing some people obsess over. That's different than the abscess one where they actually bleed into the keyboard. Sometimes with pus involved, sometimes with actual blood. Take your pick. It gets dedicated and or insane enough that that might not be a joke. Don't look that part up. You probably could find it if you tried. That's why you shouldn't.
So Pandora's story is told by Hesiod in the Theogony and Works and Days, and it begins in the Greek Golden Age, a time before women existed, when
Titan of forethought. Wait, that's what Prometheus was for? Forethought? Huh. No wonder they didn't like him. No one else actually thought ahead ever.
Had just recently been sculpted from clay by the Titan Prometheus, or possibly Zeus. Whatever the case, life was pretty swell.
Yeah.
People were immortal, technology was alright,
Zeus is
life
weird.
was good. Now Prometheus apparently really liked humans, and he was always trying to look out for them wherever he could. So when he realized that they kept having to burn all the best bits of their meat as offerings to Zeus, he decided to do something about it. So he went to Zeus with two possible offerings, a nasty
Oh, what did that say? Hey, Zeus, for future reference, which kind of offering do you prefer?
a nasty-looking ox stomach that was secretly full of prime beef, or a bone wrapped in delicious-looking fat that looked a lot tastier than it actually was. Zeus picked the tasty-looking option and accidentally set a
You've chosen poorly.
sacrifice precedent where humanity got to keep all the best bits of the cow and just burn bones and fat. So Zeus is pretty pissed, both because of the disappointing sacrifices he's getting and Prometheus' sneaky subversion of his own supposed omniscience.
On the other hand, just going to throw out there, fat and bone is not actually bad if you know how to render it down, because fat adds flavor and bone marrow is actually very soft if you get a big enough animal with a thick enough bone, because when it gets smaller, it's just not worth it. It's also, hard to get to because there's so much else there that's easier, but sometimes it's actually pretty good. Not to mention, bones make jello, so I'm not sure if that's a point against or for my argument. Hell, I'm not even sure if it's for that on my own personal preference. We're going to ignore that one.
And he decides to confiscate humanity's fire access as punishment. So this sucks for everybody, and Prometheus, again, decides to do something about it. So Prometheus sneaks up to Olympus and steals some fire, storing it at a fennel stalk while he brings it back to Earth and gives it to humanity again. Zeus spots the fire in the distance and
what?
gets crazy pissed at Prometheus, and decides to punish him first before he deals with humanity. Prometheus, rather famously, is chained to a rock, and his liver is ripped out and eaten by an eagle once a day. Of course, being an immortal titan, his liver also grows back every night, so the cycle can continue ad infinitum. Lucky Prometheus. So now this brings us to...
And that's why it was the liver, because that's what he wrapped the prime meat in instead as part of the trick. In other words, the fire was the excuse, and the type of punishment explicitly shows that. Actually, that's pretty fascinating.
Pandora. Zeus decides to inflict a lasting punishment.
Time to figuratively and literally screw mankind. And the irony here is if Zeus is the one who made her, his own foibles are all his own fault. More than anyone else thought. Which is weird.
On humanity for reacquiring fire, and he conscripts all the Olympians to help him out. He has Hephaestus sculpt a beautiful body from clay and...
Also, considering they already had female deities, but we're going to ignore that. Also, what does this one say? And make sure she's got nice dark eyelashes too, and she has to be able to flutter her problems away. Yes, dear.
Clay and brings her to life with the four winds. Then Athena dresses her in fancy clothes, Aphrodite gives her a sex drive, Hermes gives her...
Quick, escape the situation without bruising my pride. I love to hang out, but I promised my mom I'd pick her up at 4. Excellent.
a brain and teaches her how to lie, and basically all of Olympus gets in on the action, giving her all kinds of nifty presents and character flaws. Hermes names her Pandora, meaning all gifted, or all giving depending on the translation, to represent the fact that every Olympian gave her a gift of some sort. The end result is that Pandora is a beautiful, alluring creature, but secretly she's also cunning and sly. You see, she's pure evil because she lures you in by being hot, but then, she's secretly a person.
No, seriously. Hesiod's description of Pandora only says she's got cunning and guile wrapped up in a beautiful package. Some translations say deceitful. Huh. So the translation would actually change a lot of the interpretation there. Because frankly, if you take out deceitful and just put in guile and cunning, that's wow, yeah, she sounds awesome. And deceitful makes her sound like a politician.
underneath. That's right, Hesiod's vision of evil is hot, but not dumb. Pandora also rather
I'm gonna be honest, though. His version of evil sounds pretty damn awesome. Might be enough to make me evil.
famously has a Pythos with her that contains a whole mess of interesting evils to unleash on humanity. And interestingly enough, there's no implication in Hesiod's telling of the story that she's unaware of this, which doesn't really line up with later characterizations that paint Pandora as an insatiably curious dupe. Remember, this Pandora is specifically not an idiot. That's what makes her so evil. So Zeus
Oh. Oh, so that's actually kind of interesting. Because I'm used to the idea that she's just curious, so she was tempted into looking into it, so it wasn't really her own fault. It was the gods screwing around even further and fucking it up. Because, hey, poison chalice. Or, well, I guess box, but whatever. And of course, the outcome of hope and all. But the idea that she would know about it is actually very different, and I would love to find out how that played out.
presents Pandora to Prometheus's dumber brother Epimetheus. And despite having been warned by the
Forethought, I'm guessing he's hindsight. Do not, under any circumstance, take any gifts from Zeus. Honestly, that's probably a good way to look at that regardless, and probably why in all future tellings he just decided to do whatever he wanted without asking. Yeah.
forward-thinking Prometheus not to accept any gifts from Zeus, Epimetheus is a being of pure hindsight, and
Called
accepts
it.
This is a bad call, as Pandora promptly dumps out the contents of her jar full of evil, and humanity is immediately stricken with all kinds of nasty things, like natural lifespans and childbirth and
Damn. So the gift wasn't actually her. It was literally dumping out the vase. And it wasn't a box in this one either. When did it become a box?
Swedish fish. Only one thing stays in the jar. Hope.
You come out, little guy? Nope. Suit yourself.
Representing the fact that humanity will always have hope. Greece, I love you, but come on. Shot through the heart.
And next up, we have one Irish myth that I actually know something about, in the sense that it exists and he has a magic thumb of knowledge he sucks on. You know, saying it out loud like that, I feel kind of weird. Yeah. Fionn met Cumhaill, it's part of the lore, at least as far as FGO, and since it's been right so far with when it does little callouts like that, I'm assuming it might be right, and that's not helping. I'm just justifying myself at this point. I'm aware of it. Moving on.
This video has been brought to you by our friends at the Great Courses Plus, so stick around to the end to learn how you can get a free 1-month trial. It's a well-known fact that Irish mythology has its fair share of badasses. Just look at Cumhaill for one of the prime examples. But in the foggy annals
Irish
of Gaelic
Hercules,
myth
all right.
history, one badass rises above the rest as a shining example of peak awesome, almost by virtue of name alone. Leader of the Fionn, magically gifted with all the world's wisdom, and fortuitously granted a name befitting his coolness, this is the story of Fionn MacCool. Yeah, with a name like that.
Oh, wait, that's how you say it? It's cool? Irish. I don't know how to say Gaelic letters. I really have no idea. Interesting way to pronounce it. You could say it's even cool. Oh, I'm going to be such an idiot about that. My wife is just going to be like, that's nice, dear. Please stop. I'm aware. I'm going to do it anyways, because I have absolutely no chill when it comes to this.
How could he not be a hero? Now, Finn's origins are a little complicated, but it's a fairly familiar story to us modern audiences. Stop me if you've heard this one. A sellsword mercenary captain falls in love with the beautiful daughter of a powerful wizard, but the father disapproves of their union. Okay, I didn't mean to actually stop me. Yeah, cool, leader of
Honestly, the sellsword part, not so much, but it sounds like a story I have heard. I just don't know why.
the Fianna, which is a ragtag band of warriors, falls in love with Mirren, daughter of Tig. But Tig, himself a powerful druid, knows through some
Okay, so this dude is going to be trouble somehow.
whatever, that Cool will bring about his downfall. So when Cool comes calling from Mirren's hand, Tig turns him away. The story's unclear on Mirren's thoughts.
And also, it does kind of paint the idea that you're always going to get prophecy letting you destroy yourself by trying to avoid it, unless you avoid it, in which case then it destroys you, as per prophecy. Yeah, usually you bring in prophecy for two reasons. To screw someone over, or to make sure they screw themselves over. Yeah. It's either self-fulfilling or fulfilling, and both ways always go bad. There's very few stories that do anything else.
On the matter, but long story short, Cool kidnaps her and sparks all-out war between the Fianna and the High King, who Tig had asked for help. Cool is killed in the battle by this guy Gull MacMorna, but Mirren is already pregnant with Cool's son.
Good job, Dad. Now I'm a struggling single mom. Ooh.
And Tig rejects her as a result and orders her to be burned. Luckily for everyone involved, the High
Burned? Okay, we got your daughter back, so nobody is burning anybody. And the High King actually does us a solid on this one. Against the ally who called him in. Huh.
King isn't a total dick and puts Mirren under his protection. Mirren gives birth to a son, who she gives to his aunt, the druidess Bomil.
Leah and Bomil? Whoa. Sorry, just different character design than Red usually does with actual growing bits. Neat.
And her companion, the warrior woman Leah Lucra. So the kid, whose given name is Demne, grows up with fighter mom and druid mom who teach him the ways of...
Oh god, he does have 3 moms. There's a story in there somewhere. And that is how you brew a potion to strip away a future. I love it when she gets spooky. Oh my, yeah, Red's doing it intentionally, and I'm completely here for this.
Fighting and druiding. And before you ask, every source I found was very non-specific about the nature of Bomel and Leah's relationship, so interpret it however you want. So Demne is raised in...
I think we are interpreting it the same way in this case, and I'm fine with this. Oh, Bo, we got another social climber. Is it normal to nearly get murdered so much? It is for you. Actually, for a lot of princes, it probably is normal.
Secret, mostly because a metric boatload of warriors are waiting to gain mad prestige by murdering the son of the famous Cumhaill. But after a childhood of wacky shenanigans, he
I'm gonna go make a name for myself. Make sure it's not your real one, because, you know, all the murder.
starts enlisting under various kings, who all end up figuring out his true identity.
You're Cumhaill's kid, aren't you? So they tell me. Great.
Because only the son of the legendary Cumhaill could be so all-around badass. Also, somewhere along the line, people start calling him Fionn, which just means light-haired.
Wait, really? That's what Fionn means? Light-haired? I hate myself for this, and I'm just going to do it anyways. I was thinking, this kind of looks like the forest princess from Adventure Time. It's like, it's probably not in there. Like the Huntress Princess or whatever it is. And then, oh yeah, what would that have to do with Fionn and Jake? Did Fionn McCool have a talking dog by any chance? Or is that a reference to Cumhaill? Is Adventure Time an Irish myth ripoff? Because Fionn, blonde hair, it's not a 1-to-1, of course, but it's close enough that I'm actually a little concerned that's the case, and it just makes me feel weird. No, it can't be, right? There's no way. There is literally no way, right? It's not like there's a bunch of eldritch deities that walk around and kind of control everything. Or there's a ton of things that are dead. I'm going to stop talking now. It's disturbing me.
Could be so all-around badass. Also, somewhere along the line, people start calling him Fionn, which just means light-haired. Some version of the myth say the nickname got started when his hair turned prematurely white, while in others it's just because he didn't tell people his name, so they started calling him Blondie.
It's white,
anyway,
really?
eventually, Fionn runs into this dude Finnegas, a druid and poet who spent 7 years trying to catch the hilariously named Salmon of Wisdom, in the hopes that it will grant him the aforementioned wisdom. Coincidentally, the moment Fionn shows up, he manages to catch it, and orders Fionn to watch the salmon while it cooks, but not to eat any of it while Finnegas runs off and does something somewhere else. But while Fionn is tending the salmon, he accidentally burns his thumb on the grease and sticks it in his mouth to cool. And seeing as this counts as consumption of some of the salmon, this immediately grants him the infinite wisdom of the Salmon of Wisdom. Finnegas returns, notices Fionn looking a little smarter than before.
Oh, great. It wasn't even his fault, but at the same time, yeah. This is why you eat salmon, kids. Brain food. I love the eyes.
Realizing what happened, lets Fionn eat the rest of the salmon too.
Oh.
This grants Fionn all the world's wisdom, but at a price. He can only access it by sucking his thumb. Anyway.
Admittedly, yeah, that price is super lame. Hey, you're my dad. I used to run the Fianna. Any chance I could get in on that? Oh my god.
Fionn goes to the High King, a different one than the one who fought his dad, to see about joining the Fianna. But things are a little awkward because the current leader of the Fianna is Gull, the man who killed Cumhaill way back when. So obviously nobody's too keen.
Yeah, these guys are who I want to join. He actually still wants to? Damn, man. I mean, the Irish mythos from for Cumhaill was, yeah, we're gonna fight. And we're gonna kill. And, I might also have a drink with them if they survive. Or before. Or after. See what happens.
Keen on having his son join the party. But fortunately, Fionn is given a chance to prove.
Okay. Oh, you do like prove yourself, do I? Yeah, that Cumhaiill's kid. That's Cumhaiill's kid, all right. Oh, my jeez.
Prove himself. See, for the past 23 years, every Samhain, this asshole fairy prince, Alan MacMidna, would put everyone to sleep with his music and then burn the roof of the High King's stronghold. Fionn promises the High King.
Wait, he just burns the roof alone? That sounds like a... Yeah. Fairies fucking around. You guys are going to be drunk and they're not going to have a roof by the end. If you die, who cares? But also, funny joke.
He'll defeat Aelin, and in doing so prove that he deserves to lead the Fianna. Luckily, Fionn happens to have inherited a crane skin bag of magical weapons from Cumhaill, and uses a magic red-hot spear to stay awake during the magical serenade by stabbing himself in the face. Metal.
The
Then,
face?
after a suitably epic fight, Fionn kills Aelin and earns the respect of the High King and the Fianna. Gull willingly steps down, and
Also, I just realized what the music in the background was. She literally dropped in the Overwatch music. Wow, that is wrapping things up in an awkward bow.
Fionn becomes
6
leader
years
of the
ago, though.
Fianna.
And Ty gives him his horse, which fulfills that prophecy thing that caused him to reject Cumhaill in the first place. Wait, what?
The King and the Fianna. Gull willingly steps down, and Fionn becomes the leader of the Fianna.
So between giving him the horse and willingly stepping down, that was what destroyed him and started everything. Honestly, saying destroyed is a little off, but okay, sure.
Now let's talk about how Fionn gets hitched. So he's out hunting one day, right? And he spots
Please don't pull a Zeus. Please don't pull a Zeus. Please don't pull a Zeus. Oh, why? Why'd you have to give it lashes? Oh, no.
this gorgeous deer. No, let me finish. Which his hounds refuse to let him kill. Intrigued, Fionn leads the deer back to his home, whereupon it turns into a beautiful woman named Sive, who was turned into a deer by the evil Pandora. Alright, before you jump up my
Frog princess much? Just kind of backwards?
ass about this, let me talk about why it is literally impossible for me to get these names right. The simplest reason is that
There is no single pronunciation, and I don't automatically know the one you like best. Yeah, that's my reason for making creatively choosing interpretations that might fit. I'm going to have to steal a lot of these. Just want to have to clip this for later.
There's no one Irish Gaelic dialect. There are at least 3. Munster, Connacht, and Ulster all pronounce stuff differently, and even the grammar varies from region to region. Getting it right in one region usually means getting it wrong in at least one other. For this name alone,
Yes, and that transfers over to other languages as well. If you listen to someone from the west of Ireland speak English in the west or east of Ireland, you don't realize they're speaking English. You go to the north of Ireland, it doesn't sound like it. Oh, granted, that's because they're in Northern Ireland, and they are not allowed to actually do anything other than be drunk. My family has very complicated roots, but I'm obligated to hate that one regardless. It's in the contract. We have a contract. It's weird. I know.
I found like 4 different readings, and I
Fear,
also
fear,
found
far,
that everyone
furda.
gets really mad if you use the one that they don't. So, if you're, I don't know, composing an angry comment right now, just be aware that I have almost certainly heard it all before. Moving on, related to that dialect problem, the simple fact is that Gaelic is
The English alphabet doesn't support Gaelic spelling at all. I know! It's confusing. Going over there was a pain because of that, because I could not read a single sign. And when I asked someone for directions, I didn't know if they were speaking English or Gaelic. Also because my hearing sucks, so even if they were, speaking in a language I knew without the accent, I'd still probably be wrong. But it's easier not to blame myself for things.
not optimized for the Latin alphabet. Most obviously, basic building block sounds that should by all rights be single symbols are frequently represented by pairs of letters because there's no single letter that corresponds to them. Beyond that, Gaelic words are hypothetically spelled phonetically, but the unfortunate fact is that those spellings can then be read a bunch of different ways, even if you do have an intuitive understanding of the phonetic rules. Which I do not, because I am bad at this. See?
Oddly enough, there is another language that has that exact same relationship to words being written one way, then having multiple correct spellings in different locations. Chinese, which is not the association I thought I would be making right here. But the Chinese have a unified written alphabet, or, well, I guess, characters. And then they have various spoken dialects that are completely separate. You can go to Cantonese, you can go to... Actually, Cantonese is the only one I can think of off the top of my head, and I realized Mandarin, that's the main one. But there's also multiple other dialects that sound very different and are completely distinct. So that if you could be speaking one dialect to a different dialect, you will not have understanding. It might be similar to recognize that it might be a different dialect of Chinese, but it's not the same. That said, a unified language to keep it all together, or specifically written language to keep it all together. It almost sounds like Ireland was developing that, just with a lot shorter expanses between the various populations and just a lot less people. Interesting that kind of worked out the same way, so it happened twice. Neat.
Yeah, all right. Anyway, Fardara,
dark man, evil druid, member of the Rotha Dodanan. Ooh. Turned I'm not going to say Sada into a deer because she wouldn't date him. Going the Zeus option here. Part-time deer, restored by Fionn's house for some reason. I'm going with protagonist powers activate.
Who is a member of the Tuatha De Danann, the pre-Christian gods of Ireland, turns Sive into a deer, and Finn's house somehow turns her back. So Finn and Sive get married, and Sive ends up pregnant. But one day, while Finn is out doing his Fianna thing, Sive is lured out of the house by what turns out to be Fardaraha, who turns her into a deer again. Finn returns home to find the house empty, and searches the woods for Sive to no avail. But 7 years later, Finn finds a young boy wandering in the woods, spots a resemblance to his missing wife, and realizes that this kid is his son. So he names him Oisin and starts
This is how we hold a fork. We'll talk knives later. Ocean, spelled Oisin? O-I-S-I-N? Oof.
raising him. Oisin becomes one of the raddest dudes in the Fionn.
Wait, really? Future Oisin. And I get to live in Tirnanog. Wait, isn't that like... I know I've heard that, but I'm completely dropping the ball on what it was. I'm also the narrator. Really?
And is an all-around cool guy. Now, as a culture hero, Finn has a ton of miscellaneous myths about himself, but we basically covered all the major
Did he ever
bases.
find his wife
But before
again?
I wrap this up, let's take a hot minute and talk about a literary motif most commonly associated with King Arthur, but also rather famously applies here, the King of the Mountain. In this motif, some great hero, rather than dying, instead bunkers down for a prolonged nap in some local geographical feature, only to awaken in their homeland's greatest time of need or when some other conditions are met. For example, Merlin is supposedly sealed in an oak tree, Charlemagne is said to be in the Untersberg, the Golem of Prague is supposed to be in the attic of the Old New Synagogue, and Vanamoinen, the hero of the Kalevala, just kind of sailed off into the sunset,
Those were a lot of words. I'm assuming it's something Nordic up here, mostly because I see the ship. I hope she covers this one because I have no idea about any of this. It's kind of fascinating, actually.
to return in Finland's greatest hour of need.
Finland,
Man,
okay,
if even
yeah.
half of these legends are true, the apocalypse is going to be way more interesting than we give it.
I wonder how many of them were actually drawn from Ragnarok as a concept of everyone being sent back to fight after being drawn away. Because that's kind of like the Valkyrie aspect. And it was close enough culture that maybe these kind of did infiltrate or spread, or maybe spread to that one. Again, this is just me doing what I usually do when it comes to stories and how they changed. I want to see, okay, this aspect is here, but then it translates here, and we have this. In this case, did Ragnarok in the North Pantheon get translated into the Irish idea of a king, and the same with King Arthur resting and coming back, and all the other variations she did there? Finland is probably easiest because the geographic location would be the same, but is that what happened? Or did these come up first, and then they were added into the Norse mythologies later on? Because she has previously, specifically Red has previously talked about how Norse mythology is based on really just 2 books that survived from an unknown amount of time prior. Mostly because it's unknown to me. I know she listed dates and I just, it goes right over my head. For all we know, maybe it was the other way around, and the North Pantheon, from what people were canonically adding, had that in, and then they were included in the richer translations that were kept around and then translated. I don't know, but I would love to find out. Granted, there's so little Norse lore, that it might be impossible, which is entirely likely.
Credit for. Anyway, this King in the Mountain thing also applies to Finn and the Fianna, who are said to be sleeping in a cave somewhere in Ireland, only to awaken when the Dord Fionn, hunting horn of the Fianna, is sounded 3 times, whereupon they'll defend Ireland in its greatest time of need, as one does.
Yeah, they just ignored all of the Irish or the British issues there. Yeah. And that was actually really damn cool, because it just reminded me that on top of all the other myths I don't know nearly enough about Irish, because right now we've covered almost everything I know. Cú, Fionn, and I can never say her name right. Cú's teacher, Scotch. I know I'm mispronouncing it. I'm just going to give up on that one at this point. It's me. People are probably used to me being wrong. It happens. The only annoying part is that I'm annoyed by it. Damn you me. More importantly, though, this is fun. I'm sorry. Red got into the weeds on this one, got into a lot of discussions, and I'm going to have to go back and read all of those little notes at the end because, frankly, I find them fascinating. I usually do and then just cut it out, but I have to adult right away, so woo, yay, capping off a root canal. Wee. Yeah, I'm going to be unable to record for a few days. That said, this is why I'm recording ahead, is what I would have said, except I forgot, and now it's literally the day of. So, yeah, I need to go adult. Otherwise, this would be a lot longer video. I just wanted to do this, man. I like Red stuff, and I'm putting it over things that are actually important. I need to adult, and I just saw the time. I am in. That's 10 minutes to drive 15 minutes. Doable. If you don't see me again, it's because I was caught driving way too fast. And this video probably won't be edited, so it won't matter. Nice. more importantly, you guys know the deal. There's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. And yeah, wish me luck not getting pulled over for speeding. Thanks. Adios.